The Monkees, an American rock and pop band that happened because Bob Rafelson wanted to make a Beatles Help television series. Bob Rafelson and Bert Schneider recruited four guys because of their charm, charisma, and likability to act as a pop rock band on a comedy television series that would also go on to release albums and tour live. Gradually mastering their own musical talent and striving for creative freedom, Michael Nesmith, Mickey Dolenz, Peter Tork, and Davy Jones would breathe life into the band, becoming a very important act of the 1960s. The show would eventually be cancelled in 1968, and with their psychedelic film head and its soundtrack failing commercially, the Monkees faded away into obscurity. But this isn't where their story ended. Today we are talking about what happened directly after the show ended, the Monkees' wilderness years between 1968 and 1996.
You like to dance, we like to sing, so let's all lose our minds!
On April the 14th, 1969, NBC aired 33 1/3 Revolutions per Monkey, a television special that starred the Monkees, plus guests. Including Jerry Lee Lewis, Fats Domino, and Little Richard. This featured many unused concepts from their head film, and would be the last time all four of the Monkees performed together until 1986, as Peter Tork left at the end of production.
Tell me about the Monkees as far as your music is concerned. Are you going in deeper into an electric bag, or are you going to stay into the typical sound that you have now?
We're going back to the roots.
We all four have, each of us has an individual road, an individual path that we're all been trapped back. Good word. Back. And we're expounding on those as much as we can individually. There's no group sound. There hardly ever was, really.
After tensions within the group increased, Peter Tork quit, citing exhaustion. He bought himself out of the group contract. In February 1969, the Monkees released Instant Replay, their seventh studio album and the first to be released after Peter Tork had left, although he can be heard on the album playing guitar on I Won't Be the Same Without Her. A large percent of the album came from the vaults, including the single Teardrop City, which was identified by Mike Nesmith as their first intended single from 1966. One particular highlight for me from this album is the first track, Through the Looking Glass, and the final track from the album, Shorty Blackwell, a Dolenz production he later called his feeble attempt at something Sgt. Pepperish. During the remaining months of '69, the Monkees, now a trio, appeared on the Glen Campbell Good Time Hour and the Johnny Cash Show, among others. They were also contracted to appear in Kool-Aid commercials.
Kool-Aid soft drink mix.
You can always use another friend!
Their final album with Mike Nesmith, The Monkees Present, or The Monkees Present, was released in October 1969. The origins of this album date back to a time shortly before Peter Tork had left the band. The original idea was to have a double album which devoted one side to each member of the group, as they were all working pretty much as solo artists by this point. But after Instant Replay, looking for something new, they decided to revisit this as a single album. This is actually one of my favourite Monkees albums ever, and with some wonderful Mike Nesmith moments, especially Listen to the Band, and some great Dolenz tracks including Bye Bye Baby Bye Bye and Mummy and Daddy, which questioned Vietnam, the treatment of the Native Americans, and drug culture, but in an innocent Monkees kind of way. This album also featured some publicity, and most of the songs were dubbed into the repeats of the show aired from '69 to '72. Other notable tracks on this album are Good Clean Fun, Ladies Aid Society, and Pillow Time. It's an album I definitely recommend. The group had been touring with Sam and the Good Timers, a soul band, which was met with mixed reviews. And this tour failed to re-establish the band commercially. And with no singles entering the top 40, Dolenz remarked that the tour was like kicking a dead horse.
What's up, Mike?
Oh, they're not anything up, Bugs.
In April 1970, after appearing on another Kool-Aid commercial together, Nesmith decided to leave the band so he could focus on his own musical career. This left just Mickey Dolenz and Davy Jones to record the album Changes as the Monkees' 9th studio album. This album, released June the 30th, 1970, was a very different album to its predecessor, and Dolenz and Jones only provided their vocals. In fact, Jones felt they had been tricked into recording an Andy Kim album under the Monkees' name. Only one single came from this album, Oh My My, which also featured a video, but nothing much came of it. The final recording session for Jones and Dolenz Monkees came on September 1970 when they recorded Do It in the Name of Love and Lady Jane. They then lost the rights to use the name Monkees legally, thus ending the band completely. 1976 saw the Monkees television show repeated on Saturday mornings, and a new greatest hits album was hugely successful. Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart, who had once worked with the Monkees throughout the 60s, joined forces with Mickey Dolenz and Davy Jones, plus other writers and session musicians from the Monkees' past, and created a band called Dolenz, Jones, Boyce and Hart. Catchy. As they were legally prohibited from using the name the Monkees. Also, Mike Nesmith and Peter Tork were invited along, but declined the offer. The studio album, Dolenz, Jones, Boyce and Hart, was released May the 29th, 1976. They embarked on a tour and were joined on stage by Peter Tork for a guest appearance at Disneyland, and even recorded a Christmas single together, Christmas Is My Time of Year, before disbanding once again. Aside from the occasional collaborative tour during the late 70s and early 80s, the next proper reunion would happen sometime in 1986, when the then 5-year-old MTV would start showing the Monkees TV show. This brought interest in the group from a younger audience and a rise in popularity.
Drummer Mickey Dolenz and guitarist Peter Tork. Thanks for joining us today on the program. What's going on out here? You guys are on MTV, you're going on tour. What's all the recent interest in the Monkees?
Well, you've just said it. The tour
We've been
and
on
MTV
and all the recent interest in the Monkees.
It's, I think, probably, most things in this business are kind of cyclic. They tend to come around in circles.
I know I am.
Yeah, he cycles to work every day. We, the music also, I think, was very good and long-lasting. It stands up the test of time.
Pool It, the Monkees' 10th studio album, was released in August 1987, featuring Mickey Dolenz, Davy Jones and Peter Tork. Somehow the group had managed to regain legal rights to the name and reunite with Peter Tork. Sadly, this had nowhere near the success and popularity that had been predicted by the MTV resurgence. This album sounded nothing like the 60s Monkees, and far more like an 80s band. The non-album single, That Was Then, This Is Now, featured a great video and became a Billboard Top 20 hit of the summer of '86. Track 1, Heart and Soul, was also featured in a greatest hits album that followed in 1989. A notable highlight for me was the Peter Tork track Getting In, one of the most 80s sounding songs I've ever heard. Sadly, Mike Nesmith declined to take part in this album.
Prospective Monkees lined up by the hundreds at studio instrument rentals on West 52nd Street, some a little nervous and impatient, others taking time just to show off.
Pick me up with your letters, your walk-out notes.
It's all to pick successors to the old Monkees for a new syndicated TV series called, what else, The New Monkees.
The Monkees TV series repeats in 1986 generated enough interest that The New Monkees, a full reboot, would be conceived. This was a bizarre idea to create a brand new Monkees with brand new members for the Generation X. Just like the originals, they live in a quirky house together and get into misadventures, but also would record and release albums. They had a synth pop sound like Mr. Mister and Glass Tiger, and now have a cult following all of their own. The show, however, was cancelled just after 13 episodes aired.
I remember in kindergarten, we were, me and 3 other guys, good friends of mine, we went around pretending we were the Monkees, and we would get these little girls to chase us around on the monkey bars.
Well, that was 20 years ago. They did their own stuff, and it was real hot, and we're hoping to be able to do our own stuff, and hopefully it'll be hot.
I was the shortest guy, so I had to play Davy Jones. Do I look like Davy Jones? No.
Here's height.
I'm taller.
Well, 'cause...
Dolenz, Tork and Jones spent the rest of the 80s touring. After 6 very quiet years, the Monkees were back again in 1996 with their 11th album, Just Us. That's Just Us. This featured the return of Michael Nesmith, and the first album since Head to feature all 4 members of the Monkees. A notable track from the album is a remake of Circle Sky from Head. This album was heavily a Mike Nesmith project, as he mixed and produced the project while the other members toured. This was the final studio album to be made and recorded while all 4 members of the Monkees were still alive, marking the end of a 30-year musical legacy. Okay, so that was a short video there on the Monkees' wilderness years from 1968 to 1996. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe and all that, and join us again for our next video where we'll be talking about something else. Cheers.